Well, hello everyone. Welcome back to another MC radio show of episode. I believe this is episode 14. For those keen-eye viewers, you guys are probably seeing that on the channel right now. Episode 11 or 12, I believe it's 12. 12 has been taken down at not the request of my friend, but out of an unspoken respect, because I reviewed the tapes and some of the edits that I made, and I had to pull the video off because that was probably, I watched that video and I was like, what the hell was I on when I actually did this? I will tell you, everybody, I was not on anything, no drugs, no alcohol, no nothing. I was flat out speaking out, and I don't think I really. When I'm gonna do a weekend recap, I think I'm gonna script it now so that I can read it. Sort of brainstorm my ideas so that I figure out what I'm not going to talk about, because that was kind of off the cuff, and sometimes that off the cuff stuff kind of does it. Now, that's one of the examples of when my brain's jumbled and my brain's not working in the right order, or I'm just talking out of my butt. I just had to pull it because I pulled it out of respect, because it's not my place. It wasn't meant to harm, but it was taken that way. And unfortunately, there's a rule that I have on this channel: if the content is not good, or if I don't think it's in good taste, I've had to pull a couple videos in the past because of this. There was one video, I think I shot back in February or March, 2 years ago. I think April was having a complete and utter fiasco. Was having her fiasco with her doctors and her work, and she was basically going out of her mind. Unfortunately, I loaded on one video, and I told everybody, sorry, I didn't mean to do this. I now know my focus. Here's how it works. So this is not the first time I've actually had to pull a video. If Tom is wondering, this is not the first time I've had to pull a video, because the content was a little harsh. And I really didn't get any comments on this said video, but I thought it was a little harsh. I thought it was a little poor taste, and I thought it was me. So that's the reason why I pulled it. I pulled episode episode 12, because it was just not me. That's not like me. I think the detail was a little too crisp, to be honest. And I think that's the crispest I think I've ever gotten in my life, even though I'm pretty sure I could have gone crisper. I probably, if my mind was really set to being bad, or whatever possessed me. I don't know what really possessed me to shoot it that way, but that's just grade A. It's just grade A blatant talking, and honest to God, I'm never going to do that again. If I do a review or I do something, I'm obviously going to run it through my head, or script it, or write it down on what's going on, because I'm pretty sure that was pretty. I think that's the nastiest video I think I've ever. I think that's the straight up nastiest thing. I think that's the nastiest 17, 18 minutes of my life. And that's probably the most unheard of stuff. So they hit the crisp. So for those of you who watched it, I'm sorry. That was a little too crisp and a little too detailed, and that was kind of TMI for some people. And it was a little too TMI for my friends. So, Tom, if you're watching this, I pulled it out of respect, even though you didn't ask me to. It's kind of an unspoken rule for me on this channel to pull things off if it's not in good taste, whether it's me or a viewer, and Tom's a viewer, so he has the right to say this content is really bad, and that's good proofreading. And he's like, can we just throw this off the air? So I'm throwing it off the air. Those views are gone. I have 6 less views. Those 6 views are gone. Whoever watched that, sorry you had to watch that. For those of you who clicked on it, sorry. It'll never happen again. I promise I will script my ideas first before I do a detailed review of a weekend, and I will leave out what I need to leave out. So now I have new guidelines on what I can talk about and what I can't talk about. And that goes on my channel's guidelines. My channel's guidelines, I really didn't go over this. I'm probably going to do this on, I'm going to do this on Wednesday. I'm going to do the channel guidelines for those of you who are new. And now that I'm doing the MC radio show, I'm going to re-update those guidelines because it's a little different. And because my content's a little different, it's a little longer. So I'm going to obviously have to up my standards. And I'm going to have to up the rules a little bit because this is open, and now that I'm at 4,000 plus views, a lot of people are going to be watching me. I'm obviously going to have to carry myself a certain way, and I've always had to up my standards as I've grown. Never in a million years did I think I would hit 4,000 subscribers, not 4,000 subscribers, 4,000 views, let alone 4,100. So I'm going to explain that to everybody on Wednesday, in a video that's probably going to be about 15 minutes long, and you guys will obviously, hopefully you guys will enjoy this, because I will shoot, because it will help you guys understand just how I shoot, how I think, and why I don't do certain things, and why there's certain rules. There's a protocol for everything, so yeah. But yes, I told Tom I was sorry. I didn't mean to do that. I have no idea what possessed me, but whatever possessed me is gone. Recap rules and reviews are big things. I will tell you this right now, everybody. I do not get political on this channel. I try not to. Even though I talk about rights and amendments, those are our rights and our privileges as American citizens. And they are privileges. To have the freedom of speech, to be honest, in this day and age, in most countries, it's a privilege to be able to speak yourself, because we need to be able to learn off each other, and we need to be able to teach each other the limitations of the freedom of speech, because there are limitations, folks, of the freedom of speech, because it is a privilege to even talk in our country. There are countries around the world where no one can speak because they're ruled by a autocratic or communist or fascist government. And there's some people who can't talk because of how their society is, or whatever. So I will show you guys the guidelines for the channel and for the Mass Central radio show. This is what MC stands for. MC stands for Mass Central Radio, and I'll explain this on I'll explain this in the video on Wednesday. So, all right, to the next order of business. I pulled the video. Tom, if you're watching, 9 minutes into this video, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to do that. I do not know what possessed me, but whatever possessed me is gone, and I will not spray content like that again. It didn't feel natural for me, and I think it was the first time I think I've ever done it, and I think I'm going to have, as I said, if I do it again, if I do a recap of a weekend again, I'm obviously going to have a set of standards, because this is now a radio show that has 34 people viewing it, or maybe any more, because of the content, and 4,000 views, almost 41,000 views. I'm going to have to change my standards a little bit in my audience and how I talk. For those of you who know, I'm actually educated. I actually do have a degree in psychology, so um, I sometimes like to experiment a little bit with certain things, but that's one thing I don't want to experiment with. And it was not an experiment in any way, shape, or form. Those words just flew out of my mouth. I was just given a detail. Unfortunately, I just went a little too much detail. I'll say the experimentation for the classroom and for observing, basically, people. That's about it. All right, on to the next order of business. I actually watched the movie tonight. I actually watched Joker. Um, I actually thought it was actually a fantastic. I thought it was a very actually I wouldn't say fantastic because it's a lot of it's depressing, but the word I will say is it's a unique movie. It's not one you really want to praise about because of the content in it. It's very depressing. It's a very unique movie and it's a very unique brand, and I think it's in a different tier than most movies this year. Um, a lot of it's definitely psychological based. I can tell you that. It's definitely got some psychological base, and there's a lot of thrillers, and it kind of gives you into the mind of how it kind of gives you it's kind of part of it's kind of like a character to me. It's kind of like a character study into the mind of somebody who's kind of dealing with mental illness and somebody who doesn't really somebody who isn't really able to cope with it very well, either because of breakdown of a system or the breakdown of support, and just a really solid base of um, just a really state of decay. And I believe Tom will probably remember when we had this conversation, but it does actually have elements and themes from The Taxi Driver. If anybody's seen that, 1976, Robert De Niro, he plays the cab driver Travis Bickle, and it's sort of on the same lines, but in a totally different way. Um, and there's themes from the movie like social change and all that other stuff. The violence, I will have to say, is really bad. It's really um, it's a really it's a very violent movie. In fact, some of the scenes are a little excessive. I mean, some of the gunshot scenes or some of the shooting scenes are really excessive. Usually, most bad guys will put one or two rounds into their victim. Joaquin Phoenix's Joker kind of goes overkill a couple of times, and seeing that he is psychologically disturbed and he has a mental illness, he's going to be a little bit excessive. So the violence was excessive. It was almost a look into a serial killer or a mass murderer, so to speak. And it's kind of one of those studies, and it's much different from your run of the mill movie. It's just not one of those. It's just not one of those movies that you just watch for the action and you're oohed by everything. I think it's up there with a lot of, and it is very controversial. A lot of the scenes are very controversial. The violence is excessive. There's a couple of gas-worthy scenes. There's not a lot of laughing scenes in there. There's one scene in a comedy club, and that's about it. Where a guy's making a joke about sex or in foreplay. You guys have to watch the movie to obviously know what I'm talking about. I'm not going to spoil any of the jokes, but that's the only real time you really laugh a little bit because you know what they're talking about. If you're old enough to know what they're talking about, obviously. Yes, for my younger viewers, I'm not going to explain that because the parents will crucify me. Um, but the movie itself is, it starts out, you can see the brickwork, you can see the foundation of how things are going to degrade, but the movie doesn't really take a turn until like maybe 45 minutes, 50 minutes in, probably halfway through is when the movie starts jumping off the deep end and things start really turning. And the music in the movie is awesome. Not only the incidental music, but also the background music. There's old tunes. There's a couple Frank Sinatra sings a couple songs, I believe, or just sings in the movie. Well, a couple. His movie music is in the background. Obviously, he doesn't show up. It's obviously based in 1970s. The Gotham City. It's set in Gotham City. Gotham is obviously set in the 1970s. It's obviously set in the 1970s New York. It's a 1970s New York, basically. And there's elements of Batman in there and such. The Waynes do get mentioned, and the Waynes do actually show up in the movie, although I'm not going to spoil a lot. And they do a very good job of kind of referencing the Waynes and the story of Bruce Wayne and his life trajectory, how it happened. Because, you know, if anybody knows the whole Batman story, you guys will know that there's one scene in the movie that kind of fulfills that, and you're like, wow. I thought the score was good. It was definitely well timed, and actually the score did reflect the psychological, did actually reflect the psychological state of Hawking's character, Arthur Fleck. You know, Robert De Niro's in it. He does a good job. There's not a lot of people who are beyond that. I mean, there's a couple other people. There are a lot of disturbing scenes, but there's a couple scenes that will make you gasp, hold your hand over your mouth. I sure did in a couple of scenes. And I absolutely froze and I held my breath, and I widened my eyes at one scene. There's one hospital scene that kind of made my heart sink a little, and that's kind of when the story kind of started really sinking towards the bottom of the deep end. As I said, it goes over the deep end, but it really sinks down after a while. And just Hawking's act, the way he actually portrayed the character, it was actually he was very sadistic. I'll say this much. He kind of reveled in laughing at other people and doing all this. He was very sadistic in this movie. And as I said, a lot of his gun violence was overkill. A lot of people thought it was so controversial that the movie was actually in the top theater. It was in the top theater. It was actually in the top floor. There was actually two security guards, one at one entrance and one at the other. And there was like 20 people watching it. And for the $14.75 that I spent, it was actually good, because I'm going to say right now that the movie is kind of a fusion between A Clockwork Orange and also kind of Taxi Driver and a few other screwed up 70s films. And it's on that tier with those films, especially Clockwork Orange. it's basically, I'm just going to go out on a limb right now and say this is this decade's and my generation's A Clockwork Orange. I know there's been screwed up movies before, and I know there's a couple other Joker portrayals that have been disturbing, but this is the Clockwork. But this, the reason why I say that is because it's solely focused on the Joker, and Batman wasn't around to kind of screw things up. This is exactly the formula they needed, and it's actually, as I would say, it will be known as the Clockwork Orange of, or the Clockwork Orange of my generation, or one of them. I know Passion of the Christ was, but of my generation, this is probably, this movie straight up with all the violence, the content, and everything. This was a Clockwork Orange-esque movie, and I will stand by that, and I will go on the limb and say that. It definitely has the elements of a lot of moral and Urban Decay style things, because there's a lot of Urban Decay in the movie, and it has a very old school movie feel to it, since it's set in the 70s, since it's supposed to be set in the 70s, and I think it was a great movie. I think it was a very interesting movie. It was a very interesting movie. It was definitely a psychological study for me. I think I could talk about on and on, but I don't want to. I think the great score. The acting was great. It was kind of the one of those jump off the deep end style of movies. It's kind of good. The only other movie that I have to see in order to complete this is, for my year, is to watch Ford versus Ferrari in November. So I'm going to be looking forward to that very much. All right, guys. I'm going to bid this one adieu. This one's been a long one. So, as usual, everybody, long live America, God bless America, long live democracy, and long live this great country, long live our freedoms and our rights. Amen to my grandparents' spirits, amen to both of them. Pray for my grandmother as well. Pray for Thomas, Megan, and April to let them stay strong, let them strength. And this is going to be another Kinmaster video. I will see you guys in the next one. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this. And today I actually saw another piece of cinema history.